Hi there, everybody. I'm hoping you can see me. Oh, there's a comment. Hey, if you're out there, comment and let me know you're there before I get started. My name's Melanie Potock. I'm a feeding specialist and speech language pathologist, and tonight we're going to be talking about picky eating strategies and feeding therapy. Hi, Jenna. Thanks for letting me know somebody's out there. I know some other people are going to be joining us here soon. And we're going to be talking about a few things that you may have heard, and a few other courses are recommended. And I'm going to tell you why I don't do them. But that doesn't mean it isn't okay for you to do. Just want to give you pros and cons. Hi, Jody. All righty. We'll give everybody a few more seconds here. Hi, Maddie. How are you? I love it. I love it. I love seeing you guys from all over the United States. All righty. Let's get started. One of the things I want to talk about, because I got a great question from a follower, and they were wondering about a child that they were working with in feeding therapy, and they had attended my 2-day course, Feeding Therapy. It's not just about swallowing, that I just taught in Richardson, Texas this past weekend. It was so much fun. They were wondering about a kiddo that they're working with who is chewing but always spitting out. And there is a strategy that I teach in my courses that I'm going to go over with you just in brief tonight. But I want to talk about what might cue a child to spit out food. And hi, Anna. Yeah, let's talk about why kids might spit out food. You know, first of all, before we go there, we've got to talk about behavior. And as many of you know, I'm a big fan of looking at the whole child when it comes to feeding therapy. And I talk a lot about my stacking model, where the first stack is physiology. That's how your body functions. That is always going to include the child's sensory processing system. And we have to be respectful of that. Now, I'm known a little bit as a behavioral feeding therapist, but that doesn't mean that I don't play in food. As a matter of fact, I wrote a whole book about it that's coming out this week, Adventures in Veggie Land. Look, you guys, I finally have a copy. I'll tell you about it later. But I started a whole book about playing in food. I'm all about playing in food. I'm all about the sensory experience. But I am also really, really focused on the child's behavior and what cues the child to behave that way. That's called our antecedent. So your antecedent is what happens right before that behavior occurs. And the behavior can be positive, or it can be not so positive, undesired, we call it. Well, if you have a child who has a tendency to chew and then wants to spit out the food, you have to determine what is it that is making him think about spitting instead of thinking about swallowing. And what can I do to help him think about propelling that food back and swallowing it? In a lot of courses, I know it's popular to introduce what we call a spit cup. And that's just a small cup or sometimes a bowl that you place by the child's placemat during meal times, so that the idea is that the child will pick up food, chew it, and really get the sensation of the texture and the temperature and the flavor, of course, and the aroma. But if he's not comfortable swallowing, he'll have something to spit it in. As much as I love that concept, the reason why I don't provide a spit cup is because from a behavioral standpoint, it's a visual cue to think about spitting. Just like the green Starbucks sign is my visual cue to think about getting a latte. I don't want this in front of a kiddo. I don't want him thinking about spitting. On the other hand, if he needs to spit out food, I want him to feel safe. So instead of putting a spit cup in front of him, I simply provide a good old-fashioned paper napkin. Now, I love a cloth napkin because I like to be kind to the environment, but to be honest with you, a A paper napkin works a little bit better for this because a child can put the paper napkin right on their lap and then scoot in close to the table, and they won't feel that napkin necessarily, especially if they have pants or leggings on. And they're not very likely to pick up the napkin and place food in it and put it back on their lap. My kids don't really like wet food in their lap, but if they really, really need to spit, it's there, they have that option. And if they do and they want to put it on the table, I'll give them a fresh napkin, that's fine. But I find most of the time, if I don't have a visual cue in front of them and instead it's under the table on their lap, they're less likely to spit it out. Now, oh, Jody says she prefers the napkin too. Well, let's talk about what sort of strategies can we give these kids so that they feel more comfortable swallowing and they don't feel the need to spit and they don't get anxious and scared. For kids who are first learning to chew, or kids who are learning to chew a variety of textures, I really want to recommend my little plate here to show you. It's always tricky holding it up to the camera, especially in this light. Let me see if I can get a little better angle here for you. So look, guys, this is just a piece of cheese. Hello, there it is. Just a little piece of cheese. And I want to show you that I've cut up the pieces into about the size of a pea. And you'll notice that it is in the shape of a cube, literally a cube, so that when the kids put it in their mouth, they can feel the edges of the cube that much better than if we had just taken a piece of cheese and maybe torn some off. That's a really different feel in their mouth. Okay, so when the kids put the cheese in their mouth, you want to have them put it right over here on their dinosaur teeth. So right here. See how well I can hold that there? Okay, it's soft. And when the kids are holding it, let me take it out so I can talk. When the kids are holding it, I'll have them hold it for a few minutes and then let them place it on a plate, not spit it. Place it on a plate that I'm holding. So we will work on that in feeding therapy. That's not something we do during meal times because kids who are still learning to chew aren't really ready during meal times to practice chewing. If they've learned to chew a bunch of different foods already in feeding therapy, then I'll use my exposure chart, and I'll remember to put the link in here for you. It's on my website, and it's my chart I use for exposing children to a variety of textures and temperatures and things to chew. If we have 4 or 5 that are going really well in therapy with mom or dad present, then I'll begin to introduce those foods at mealtime. But that's because he already knows how to chew them. And that added pressure, actually, of being at the table with an audience at home is even more challenging. So I got to teach them the motor piece first. Maddie asks, would you recommend using string cheese for this? Absolutely. The only thing, Madeline, the one thing you want to remember is that cheese of any sort is a very different food right out of the refrigerator drawer, right? Like all of our string cheese cuts in long packages, than 10 minutes later on a plate warming up. So a lot of my kids do pretty well with nice, firm, cold string cheese cut into cubes. But I'll only cut a few cubes off and I'll leave the rest in the fridge until I'm ready for it. Because otherwise it gets kind of warm on the plate and it's a lot smellier, and it doesn't stay in the cube as well, and it feels very different in their mouth. That's why so many of my parents, hi Helen, so many of my parents say, you know, my kid will eat string cheese fine at home, but he won't eat it at school. Well, that's because it's warmed up a little bit. And when you open that package of string cheese, it's kind of rubbery. And I mean, I like a smellier, warmer cheese. That's as you get to really learn to love cheese. You want it more at a room temperature, but little kids don't. They want it firm, and they want it not very strong in terms of taste, for the most part. Every kid's different, but for the most part. So remember to keep it chilled and then cut it into those little cubes. So when you have that pea-sized cube and you practice just keeping it on their dinosaur teeth and they place it on the plate, what you want to do is just over time have them hold it a little bit longer, and then practice chewing it. And typically the way I'll do that is introduce something that's super fun that will show a number 2, 3, or 4. Like you could take really cute, I have these Nemo cards, you know, little fish. I have these little Nemo play cards, and I'll just take out the 2s, 3s, and the 4, spread them all over the desk or the table where I'm working, and then I'll say, pick a card, and the kids will pick a card, and if it's a 3, I'll say, oh, we're going to chew 3 times, and then place it on the plate. And then when they're chewing, I'm not expecting a rotary chew. If you just get a munch, 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 get rid of it, that's fine. We're just practicing chewing. Now, how do we get them to swallow? Well, what you're going to do is always have a cup with a lid. And, you know, right now I'm kind of modeling these things for you as if we're working with a 3, 4, 6-year-old, something like that. But of course, you can do these same strategies with teenagers, just have more age-appropriate utensils and cups. Right now, I've got this really short little take and toss cup. It happens to have a bendable straw in it. You can see it winding around in there. You don't have to have a long straw like that. You could have just a regular short straw, but here's what I want you to do. Make sure that the diameter of the straw, and I hope you guys can see this, is really, really skinny. This straw is from talktools.com. When I'm all done here, I'll put the link in for you so you know where to order it. It's the same straw that comes in the Honey Bears, but I cut mine down to make them like a regular size straw. And then what I love about it is the outside is fairly wide and it's very hard to compress, but it's very soft silicone material, so it's comfortable for kids. But the inside of the straw is pretty narrow. And why do I care about that? Because when they've got that little piece of cheese or whatever it happens to be in their mouth and they're chewing 2 or 3 times, then I want them to take a quick sip of water. Look how short I have the straw right here. That's because I have the water, see, filled all the way to the top. If you had the water down here with a long straw, the kids won't get the water right away on their tongue to wash the chewed food down. You want instant washing down for them. Otherwise, they'll start gagging and they'll want to spit. So set them up for success by filling the water up all the way and providing a really short straw. If you want to do a long curly straw like I did here, there's really no purpose for that with the exercise we're talking about. It just happens to be the way I have it in this cup today. You can totally go with one like this. Okay, alrighty. Jody says, placing on the plate that way looks like it could be a fun activity for lingual lateralization. I love that idea. It absolutely is. You know, I like kids to learn to chew on their dinosaur teeth right away. I actually don't have them bite off in the front, especially if they tend to spit out. Because when you bite here, next step is get rid of it, right? But if over here, you've got much better control and you're more likely to hang on to it and feel comfortable with it and really start to grind at it when you're ready. But it doesn't impact your tongue very much unless you purposely push it out. And that's because that lateral tongue reflex begins to integrate and actually has integrated by about the age of 2. So good point, Jody. Oh, hi, Shanna. There's my friend Shanna. So nice to see all of you here. So many people. This is great. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about why I personally don't use a spit cup, because I think about antecedent, behavior, consequence. And if the antecedent is the presence of the cup that makes me think about the behavior of spitting, and I spit out, and now I don't have that food in my mouth anymore, and that's what I wanted, there's pretty good reason to spit it out. And this is a very strong cue. What we really want to do is teach kids to chew it and swallow. And the way we do that is by keeping the pieces super small. And I personally progress through 10 or 20 foods that way. Some of those foods will start to get a little bit bigger just because the child gets more confident. But I don't push bigger foods, bigger cubes right away. I want them to think this is so easy. And then we transition it to meal times. Okay, let's go on with the next question that I got earlier. I also want to talk about, I'll often go over to families' homes and they'll have these wet wash rags, they're washcloths, right next to the kiddo because they read about that on a Facebook forum, or maybe they had a therapist who introduced that. And I understand why, because we want to be very respectful of the child's sensory system. And a lot of kids do not like getting their hands messy at all, and they need that relief. Problem is, so often I see these kids get really dependent on these cloths. And kids in feeding therapy, they're pretty anxious kids. This is hard for them. And when they have something like this to constantly wring in their hands, you know what's happening? They're not eating with their hands. So how do we be respectful about what they need, yet not constantly offer a visual cue to wipe your hands? What I do is I go into people's homes. So I often have, it's my old laptop. And when my laptop is right next to me and it's open, I'll put the washcloth over here. So the kiddo can't see it, but it is right there on the table. And then if I sense they need some relief, I pick it up and I wash their hands. And you want to use really firm pressure and a smile and give them a minute to kind of just get some comfort and calm down, and then go from there. However, they've still got that trusty napkin on their lap. So pretty soon they learn to use the napkin too. So think about it. Antecedent, behavior, consequence. What do we have on the table that might be cueing the behavior that we're trying to extinguish? You can think about the same thing in the environment. Think about a kid who throws food all the time. What does that kid get out of that? First of all, he gets an empty tray. But if the dog runs in and laps up all the food, that's pretty fun. So maybe he's just getting that out of it. You have to look at the whole environment and what's going on with the whole family, what the parents' reactions are. They mean so well, but it's hard for them, and they often don't realize that they're accidentally reinforcing some of these behaviors. Most of all, what I want you to know is this is just how I see it. It doesn't mean it's the end-all, be-all way of doing things. And I always want to encourage all of you to go to as many courses as you possibly can, and try to spread out those CEU dollars as much as you can. I know it's hard. And learn as much as you can. If you just go to one course per year, that's only one thing in your toolbox. And we really need to have a lot of strategies in our toolbox, because not every family is the same. Not every kid is the same, for sure, or this job would be so much easier. And you're not the same as me, and I'm not the same as you. So most of all, we should keep talking, because I learned so much from all of you, and I'm hoping that this has helped you quite a bit today. So I'm going to be looking at some questions here in just a second, but before I do, I just want to mention really quick before I forget that as I was showing you earlier, my brand new book, this is my fourth book, Adventures in Veggieland, just came out. It is on its way to the distributor warehouse, and they will then send it over to Amazon, because I know over 500 of you have already pre-ordered it. And last time I checked about an hour ago, it is still 39% off on Amazon if you want to try to pre-order it in time. So watch for your books, if you pre-ordered, to arrive sometime next week, worst case by the end of January. And then the official release date is, thanks for the love, I love that. The official release date is February 6th, and that just means it's going to be at bookstores worldwide by February 6th. So if you happen to get it, and if you happen to love it, I think you will, then please post a review on Amazon so that more people find out about it. I really want to tell you very, very quickly, you're going to find, look, see if I can get it to focus in here. I don't know if I can. Lots of research behind my theory that we expose, explore, and expand. And you're going to find over 100 activities and recipes, including food play for every single vegetable, and lots of tips from me, especially for hesitant eaters. Okay, let's get back to questions. So I saw a question here. Oh, hi, there's the communication company. I'm glad you like that analogy. Alexandra has a question. Do you have another video for older kids who have been in food therapy but are no longer in therapy? How to help us parents cope with refusing to eat meltdowns and foods and staying stuck on the same foods and not moving forward any further? I do. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll find over 70 videos there that can help you. And also, when I'm all done here, Alexandra, I will post a bunch of those under your comment for you so that you have some resources for that as well. Let's see, any other questions? Jody says, I love seeing the kids progress from kneading that towel to brushing their hands together to clean the hands off, and then seeing a 2-year-old using their pants as a napkin. I do too. The parents don't like it very well, but I'm so happy when they're not using that cloth anymore. All right, super. I'm just going to glance a little bit more and make sure that I didn't miss any questions here. Jessica says, we were just talking about this with my colleagues who attended your course this weekend. Oh, that's awesome. I'm sorry to get to see you there, Jessica. And I think, does anybody else have any questions before I sign off with all of you? Kara says, I'm an SLP and I'm hoping to attend one of your courses this year. What course do you recommend starting out with? I really recommend that both parents and therapists start with my online course. It's called the Picky Eater video course. I'll post it in the comments for you. When you go to my homepage at melaniepotock.com, just click on the video tab and pull it down. There's a whole pull down menu. That course is 5 hours of my book. Let me grab it for you. Co-authored with Dr. Young, Dr. Namali Fernando, Raising a Healthy, Happy Eater. But it's got a lot more live practical tips for you because we teach it in Dr. Young's kitchen. Plus, you can take it at your own pace over 30 days. And let me give you a discount code so that you can get the $50 course for $40. The code is MyMunchBug20. Here, guys, I'm going to type it in for you very, very quick. MyMunchBug20, you know, because I call all the kids I work with my Munchbugs. All right, and I'll put that link in there in just a few minutes as well. So start there with that video course. If you need CEU credit for it, I don't manage CEUs, but you will on that pull down menu see a CEU certificate, objectives, etc., that you can consider turning into whatever association you're trying to get those educational units for. And then as far as the other course, if you're a feeding therapist, I highly recommend my 2-day course. Feeding therapy, it's not just about swallowing. And you can find that on my website. I'm teaching that all over the United States, in Ireland this year, if you want to come to Ireland, and also in Canada. And next year, I'll hopefully be teaching in Australia as well, probably in February. Jenna has a question. What should I do if my client becomes upset and cries when I try to move to chewing from holding on the teeth? He tends to become upset easily if he doesn't want to do something. Okay, first thing I do is I set a timer. And I usually just use my phone, and I have the kids set it. And if it's a child that cries easily, I'm going to set it literally for 3 to 4 minutes. But I like to work up to about 15 minutes. Doesn't mean that if you have an hour with that child that you aren't going to go back and do another 3 or 4 minutes 10 minutes later. You can get a lot of little 3 and 4 minute sessions in an hour if you give him short breaks. When he knows that that timer's going to ring and he starts to get the idea about that, he'll be more comfortable with you challenging him a tiny bit, because, you know, as therapists, our goal is to help that child make progress. And just like any coach, we have to gently push. And sometimes kids will cry because they're mad. That's okay. When that little one that you're talking about, Jen, has the little piece in their teeth, and they place it on the plate, remember, don't have them spit, because spitting is getting rid of it quickly. Have them place it. So that might be the first step you actually need to work on with that kiddo, is placing it on the plate. And then kind of stall. I know you've taken my course, but kind of stall to get it there and slow things down. Be silly until you get it under their chin. Then introduce chewing once and getting rid of it, twice and getting rid of it. And that can take a couple weeks. Really slow it down. Once you feel like they can do 3 chews and then take a drink, the best foods to start with for that would be something like freeze-dried strawberries. You know, the ones from Costco that come in the bag. Oh my gosh, here I am. I wrote this book about vegetables, and I do tend to use things like cotton candy in feeding therapy because I can squish it up into little cubes, and then it melts right away in their mouth, and the kids really like it, and it builds their confidence. Because if the motor skill you're looking for is chew and swallow, if it dissolves slightly, that really helps that situation. You also might want to consider like a Ritz cracker or a really buttery goldfish, something, perhaps maybe a Cheerio, something like that. Anyway, I hope that helps. And let's see. In your book, Sarah says, in your book, you recommend not telling young kids that they can spit out food if they don't like something. How do you recommend to encourage them to taste test a food? Well, I have a lot of different videos on that, and it's a lot more than I can go into in these next few minutes that we have left. So, Sarah, if it's okay with you, I'm going to spend a few minutes after we close, and I'm going to post a bunch of ideas for you right under your comment. And then, you've given me an idea. I think maybe we should do a Facebook Live all about that. How about if I do that next week? Same time, same place. Let's see. Anybody else? I think that's it. Thanks everybody so much for tuning in. This will download in just a few minutes. I'll keep it on my Facebook page, and I'm really hoping you guys like Adventures in Veggieland, and I hope to see you at one of my courses soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.